My humble respect to Guru Mahan, Guru Piran Sivasangaran, Guru Piran Nyo, fellow Nyanis. Today I'm going to finish the final section of this chapter 17, which is life, on Mahan's teachings. And you'll see that the teachings are very universal. I'm going to summarize everything that we have covered in the first 5 parts and then pull out the essence of those different models. You see that we covered there are different models to describe what life is all about, what drives life, what are the key motivations that gives us existence, and also how our life, we go through this journey, we have sukhas and dukkhas, how do we as human beings, as intelligent beings, manage our life. And in this chapter, we covered, several models. The first one is actually the stages of life. And we covered the different stages of life, from being a fetus right up to, being adulthood, and as we gracefully age, the body finally will have to transition. And we saw that these different stages, like all of us have to go through this. And in all that changes in the body, the mind that is caught up in the body will also go through changes, will go through uncertainty, will go through volatility, will go through the swings of sukha and dukkha. And ultimately, as the body gets diseased and the body, prepares for death, the mind is also don't want to let go. And there's a lot of turbulence. And great saints and sages show us that these stages of life everybody goes through. As long as the mind is anchored on the body, the mind will go through this turbulence. But within this mind, there is something that is unchanging. So it's just anchor on that. So the whole model talks about how do we anchor the mind on that unchanging substratum. What is it that you need to do to achieve that? So we talked about that. Then we covered, the chariot model. Again, the chariot model gives us a description of how, the chariot has a path it has to take, the horses, it has the driver, it has the occupant, all those things, and the chariot itself. So here, great saints and sages try to teach us through this chariot of how smooth or how rough the ride depends very much on the driver and the instruction that he gives the senses. And again, in our lives, it's like driving a chariot. There are moments that we have rough roads, there are moments smooth roads, there are moments we have curved roads, slippery roads. But as long as the mind is calm and cool and illumined, it would be able to navigate through. As long as we understand who the driver is and what is being driven and the path that we are taking, we see that we become more illumined. The question then is that, how do we become illumined? How do we know who is the driver? How does the driver have full control over the mind? Because the mind is not so easy. The mind has got so much, gets caught up in the alluring material world and pushes off things that are challenges. So the mind needs to be powerful to be able to negate all these challenges of life and proceed, in a smooth way, even though the road is rough, even though the road is slippery. So we spoke about how do we unlock the true driver of the chariot? How do we unlock the power of the chariot, the power of the driver, such that, everything is in harmony? And we spoke about this. We also spoke about the ocean model, where on the surface, we have a lot of turbulence. The surface of our lives, there's a lot of turbulence. As we go deeper, the mind becomes more calmer and cooler, and ultimately, there's a force that drives everything. So the question is that as long as we are in the surface, we are prone to turbulence. As we descend deeper and deeper, it becomes calm and cool and composed. And we understand the force that is guiding all this, including that which gives rise to the waves. Understanding that gives us better ways of managing the waves in our lives. So again, what would take us down, deep down to the bottom of the ocean, such that there is a current on its own. We also looked at the Earth model, again at the surface of the Earth. You have push and pull, you have gravity, you have but as you go deeper to the core, we see that the gravity is negated. You attain a blissful state of samatva, oneness. Again, we see that in the same way we saw the breaking the gravity phase, as long as we are in the surface of that Earth, we are always pulled by Earth. We're pulled by the materiality. So to be able to break away from the materiality, we need the rocket boosters to break away. And there's two rocket boosters that we need for our mind. And that is the Viveka and Vairagya, the ability to discriminate between what is real and unreal, what is mortal and immortal. And Vairagya is not to be caught up in it. That, being like space, neither attached nor detached. And how does the mind attain this? Again, we spoke about how do we use that thrusters. So in all this model, we see that change is happening, but within the change, there is a changeless substratum. And when the mind is, gets caught in the gravity of materiality, it goes through all the changes that's happening in the material world. And the mind is wedded and welded to that soul substratum with this, infinite possibilities and potentialities, calm, cool. You see that the mind also has that sublimity. So we saw all this model. It's all great. But the question then we have is that what can we learn? What is common in all of them? If you see in all of them, there is a very important component that we have, which is actually our spiritual compass. We all need to discover our spiritual compass. Without the compass, we will not be able to transition life, the changes that is going through, that guides us while change is happening. The compass guides us towards that changeless substratum. And we see that the compass helps us to logically try to understand the experiences and the knowledge that we are getting through the wisdom knowledge of the scriptures that many great saints and sages have revealed, and the knowledge of one's own spiritual pursuit and experiential spiritual journey. So both the experiential spiritual journey coupled with the wisdom knowledge of all the scriptures and masters through a scientific lens and a logical reasoning, sensing mindset, we see that, it provides that guide of the transition, the stages of our lives, the chariot, we know who the driver is and the compass guides us. Same thing, with respect to the Earth model and the breaking the gravity model and the ocean model. So we all have the spiritual compass, The spiritual compass is what Swamiji sometimes refers to as the leading us to the big I. So what do we need to do? Just to summarize, how do we discover our own spiritual compass? And this is summary of everything. So the spiritual compass is critical for us to lead a enlightened, illumined, blissful, and a very universal and inspirational life. But first, we need to discover our spiritual compass. And this is the part that is very important. Like anything, if you want to master, we need to allocate time for yourself. That is the self, right? If you don't have time for yourself, you will never make this discovery, right? So the key thing that we learn from all of this is that you need to allocate time for self-discovery, self-development, and the self-realization process, right? If one gives excuses, I don't have time for this, I don't have, then you would be excused from understanding your own self. nature will completely excuse you from discovering who your potential is. That's number one, allocating every day a time, you know, ideally an hour in the morning. And whenever you have quiet time, you have that, time for the self. The second aspect is time for what I call ICRM, which is actually introspection, contemplation, reflection, and meditation. You see that we go through the passage of our life. We just go through it without thinking through the changes that are happening at the physiological level, at the mental level, at the intellectual level, but the spirit is the same. So we really need to allocate some time to understand the passage of our life, our journey, and learn to divinize it, learn to enjoy it, learn to, have the best, even though during the most challenging time. And how do we do this? The same thing we saw that in the chariot model, the self-reflecting, you know, mind that is saying, who am I? Who is the driver? Who is the senses? And when it gets a grip of itself, it's able to hold the mind with a universal touch to be able to drive that chariot, in a blissful way to the path of universality. The same thing with gravity, the same thing with, breaking gravity, right? And we see that the same thing with ocean. How do we descend? There's an art of descending into the ocean, and there's an art of ascending. If you ascend too fast, you get nitrogen build up in your brain, and you'd have a disease called bends. So there's an optimal way of going down to the depth of the ocean, and there's an optimal way of coming back up. So again, that art is very important. So allocate time for introspection, contemplation, reflection, meditation on that great philosophies, the great wisdom knowledge, and reflect back how it's relevant to us. And this is where the experiential self-realization process is very important. Things must make sense. Don't take things for granted. Don't take things in a dogmatic way. There's no learning. Allocate time for research and development. I'm not talking about the laboratory research. Transform your mind, your intellect, your senses, your body as a laboratory of experimentation. Test out different things, right? So you have to research of yourself. Researching, that's what it means. Research means researching. The mind has forgotten. So you're researching who you are. That's what research means. And when you research and you find that discovery who you are, you start seeing development. Wow, I can start using this. So for me, research and development is searching who I am. The mind tends to forget. When the mind, through the search, discovers who it is, you see that everything starts blooming, everything starts developing. So that's number 3. When one becomes, through this process, when the mind becomes so illumined, it's continuously understanding, integrating, becoming enlightened, you see that it starts integrating not only itself, it transitions from the selfishness to the selfness to the selfless. And this is the part number 4 is really important. We allocate time for family members. That is our duty. I mean, this is as parents, as children, we have a duty. The friends, yes, they give us some joy. So that's our duty. And we cannot run away from our duty, right? So this is part of divinizing our duty, allocating time for relatives, family, friends. All these are very important part of the what I call interactional sadhana. One is meditational sadhana. The other one is jnana sadhana, that is acquiring the knowledge. And this is interactional sadhana. You're interacting with the world around you with an illumined mind. So allocating time for friends and family, the 5th one is actually time for service and community work. So you're extending beyond your own family. Yes, family, you have responsibility. Yes, friends, you have some joy you get in return. So these are all things that you need to do. But number 5 is extending beyond this without any expectation, that service to the community, seeing that broader perspective of the personality, the universal personality, and that community work. And if you see the scriptures, great saints and sages, that's what they were doing. Once they worked really hard to acquire this knowledge, and then they pass on this knowledge without any expectation or favor. So as we do this, we see that something very interesting happens. Our mind becomes more focused, more calmer, more peaceful, more enlightened, more expanded, more, we start making more discoveries. We see nature starts opening up its secrets to what nature is all about, who nature is, who the creator is, who you are, and what your relationship is. When that starts expanding, your circle of spiritual circle starts expanding. Ultimately, you see that it encompasses everything, everyone, every person. And you see that the mind then becomes more graceful. The mind becomes graceful in its thoughts, in its speeches, in its interaction, and ultimately its behavior and actions. So we see that, actually it's quite simple to attain this. It requires, some level of effort, but once you start putting in, you see that it becomes easier, right? So riding the chariot or going through the transition of our lives in all these models, this is what the core essence of Mahan's teaching is. And what this leads is actually, I've covered this before, it leads us to the 7 Ps, right? Nobody needs to tell you that you have to get up and do the introspection, contemplation, reflection, meditation. You don't need a guru every week reminding you this. It happens automatically. The moment you do that, your purpose in life becomes very clear. That's guided by the spiritual journey. We're covering now Bhagavad Gita. We see that the purpose of Arjuna became very clear after this illumination. The same thing in all our lives. We have, sometimes we don't know what our purpose is because we haven't spent the time to research about ourselves, our lives, our journey, and we're expecting somebody else to do it for us. So we mortgage our intelligence. Hence, we become controlled by the forces outside and the people around us. So we see that, the purpose becomes really clear. As the body is transitioning, we see that our purpose becomes to learn every moment of our lives as the body slowly grows, develops, sustains for a while, and starts declining. The function starts declining. So we start seeing that, life, the body is changing, the meaning of our lives slowly as we gracefully age. Another interesting thing is that when you do this, actually you have a zest for living, You really are passionate, you want to learn new things, you get that enriching experiences, you really are looking for this something that you cannot express by words. Mahan used to say that the passion, the summa irukum sugam, and that's what the zest for, that enlightenment, to know the knower, right? And wherever there is, you try to acquire this knowledge, and you don't waste time. It's what Yogananda says, that somebody asks you, when should we do the prayers? He says, it's not tomorrow or day after tomorrow. It should be done at every moment. And this is what, that passion for living is. The other one is that, you will know as you do this, as you understand the transition of life, as you understand who's holding the reins of that chariot, as you go deeper into the ocean of life, as you go deeper, as you go deeper into the earth, and as you break away from gravity, you see that the mind attains a sense of calm, sublimity, cool, unperturbed, a sense of stealth, like nothing shakes it, right? And you see that, you become more calmer, greater clarity, a sense of perseverance. Yes, I'm going to steadfast to attain these goals of my life. Not just enlightenment, but to see enlightened living, breathing that enlightenment in every facet of our lives. Like a balloon, we breathe our air. It's like breathing that spiritual dimension in every facet of our lives, and it blooms. The same thing, you have persistence, relentlessly, continuously. It's not just taking a break every moment. The moment you wake up, you're connected. The moment you're brushing your teeth, having your bath, your mind is always in that connected state until you go to bed, right? So it's not just during meditation states. So we see that ultimately in the transition, as the body is liberated from its materiality, as we depart that body, as we have full control over the chariot and navigating it through and its autopilot, as we reach that summit of the depth of the ocean, as we get to the core of the earth, and as we break away from gravity, we see, wow, a eureka moment takes place. We attain this beautiful state of Paranjoti, which is, the Paramporul. Paramporul is that the creator or the divinity in its full form, in its full enlightening form. You experience it. And this is what, and it doesn't just happen during meditation, it happens at every moment. And this is what we learn from these models, that it is not about the material world. Material world is important, but know what's powering that material world. So what's the benefit? And clearly we see that, life becomes an awesome journey. You build that spiritual capital, you get that mental and emotional capital, your body improves, your health improves because there's no more tension, your intellectual capital expands because now you have time to think, you leave out the frivolous things, your intellect becomes sharper, the creativity in you starts bubbling, you get great ideas, you get great poetry, great music. If you're a musician, you've got great mathematics will start appearing, and you see that, wow, you can figure things out. This is part of life, figuring out things easily. And then you discover, wow, within myself, there is this nature that has embedded itself in me, and the full capital, the wealth of nature is embedded in me that enables me to discover it, harness the power of nature, and really live a blissful life. Our interactions, social capital improves. We're able to relate to everybody. We will never have anybody as an enemy. We'll never have this in our vocabulary, I don't like somebody. All that disappears, right? We become empowered. We become self-sustaining. We don't need, to depend on others. If we don't know something, we know how to go and look for the solutions, right? If we don't have, resources, we know how to look for that resources. That's what life is about, Without the spiritual compass, this is very difficult. Suddenly you see the leadership within yourself starts emerging, that CEO, Chief Enlightenment Officer. The CEO starts emerging from you, the Chief Enlightenment Officer. And when you attain that Chief Enlightenment Officer, you become the CEO, the small CEO. This is the big CEO, Chief Enlightenment Officer. When you attain that, you become a good small CEO, Chief Executive Officer. Executive, that means you have full executive power of your life, of other people's lives, of the companies that you run, and the leadership that you provide to the greater community. The leadership capital emerges because of the power within you. And finally, one attains that economic capital. You will never be poor materially in this world. And that's what makes life really exciting, that, all the capitals of life comes together and gives you a combustion of a beautiful, enlightening life. And I want to finish off with this beautiful quote, that what life is all about, right? In this, if you see that, if you do all this, you become very positive, even during the most challenging moment, even during the most critical moment of your life, even the most, sometimes people sink to the real bottom. Most people will sink in the bottom and never come up. You sink to the depth of the core of your universal personality. And when you rise from there, the rise is really, you soar at a different level. So here it says that if you think, you tend to be more positive, every sound becomes a music. Everything that you hear, even sometimes the most difficult things, becomes a melody. This is what Bhagavan's Gita means, the rhythm of the universe, the rhythm of the creator. So even criticism becomes a music of how one can learn from it. Every moment becomes a dance. Every moment is synchronized. There's no moment of abruptness. Every moment is gracefully one glides through. The smile becomes laughter. You see a sense of smiling and laughter and humor and joy. You should come to my office and see, the amount of laughter we have, right? So this, your life becomes very happy. You become a happy person, a winsome personality. Mind becomes meditation, and this is what Swamiji says. Swamiji is meditation, meditation is Swamiji. The mind is always in that meditative state. The mind is always connected, not disconnected. And when that happens, life is a celebration. You see, when people die, they have funerals, right? Actually, the funerals are a celebration of life. It's not a sorrowful event. Yes, it's sorrowful for many that they are going to miss them, but actually it's a state of liberation, samadhi, going back to one's own state. And one celebrates the life of somebody who has departed, as opposed to being very sad. Yes, sadness is there, but we, celebrate, all the achievements, the interactional sadhanas, the things that they have left behind, so that we can learn. So our lives become a celebration. If we live a life of celebration, for us, there is no death. Even in death, people say, wow, this person's life was really inspirational, right? And this is what Swamiji speaks about. And if you see, Swamiji also speaks about this, if you see on page 70 of this book, he says there's a question someone asked on page 71. It says that if a man attempts to save another in danger, does he want to save his body or life? And Swamiji's answer was that he saves the duty to which the man is wedded. This is a very interesting question, you see. What it says is that if the mind is so wedded and welded to the material world, it will see things in a very limited way, right? So if you see things in a limited way, you would be very selfish only to yourself. Somebody is drowning, forget it. It's not my problem, right? So you become very selfish. But if one is wedded and welded to the universal dimension, they would use their most creative ways, maybe call people. If they know how to swim, they would go down and help the person. But if they don't know how to swim, they would find ways to throw a rope, bring help, try to somehow save that person, because you see that life as one, right? How many, many times we have encountered this, when we sit in a restaurant, somebody comes to beg for food, or a street dog that is, trying to feed its pups, we ignore it, and the whole idea is that how can we make a difference? And this is what this question is. The next time when you see somebody begging, or the next time, think about this, how can someone, told me, well, this is a syndicate. I said, that's their problem. It's not my problem. My problem is that I see them as God. They need food. That's all I see. And you partake what you can give. So the blemish is not in my mind. I see everything as divinity, right? So when somebody is in difficulty, if you can help, you help. And this is part of the expansion of that service. This is what Mahan did. He acquired this knowledge. This knowledge was kept as a secret for many thousands of years. It's theoretically written. But this Mahan unlocked it, and he distributed it to everybody without favor. Had he said, look, I want to keep it to myself and my family, let me patent it, and then have charge a lot of money, have it in a nice hotel, I don't think his name would have lasted this long. But here he did something very extraordinary. He gave up all his profession to discover this truth. By discovering this truth, he started showing people how to discover, how to, understand the changes that are happening in the body, but yet there is changeless substratum called the big I, how to touch that, how to enable the mind to touch that, how to understand there's a chariot, the race is going on, life is going on, but how do we hold reins really very strong to navigate that? How do we hold that, enable the big I to hold on the small I, the ego, very closely? This Mahan showed how to do this. The same thing, how to go to the core of the earth, core of our soul, to discover that beautiful samadhi state or the samatva state, and then ascend back to the material world without being impacted. The same way, in the oceans, touching the current, this Mahan showed how to get there. Everybody's spoken about it, but he showed step by step how to get there. The same thing, how to break the gravity. And here he says that it all depends on your state of your mind, and the state of your evolution. And here it is. I'm going to show you how to get there. So in this clip, I try to show what is it that Swamiji showed us, step by step, allocating time for meditational sadhana, specific type of meditation he showed on how to neutralize the material world, silence the material world. In that silence, how to experience an expanded state of consciousness, the big I, and attain a state of liberation from that sukha dukkha cycles, and finally realize the finality, I am that. And he should reveal that self, that silence, how to silence the mind, the expansion of our consciousness, the liberative state, and finally, I am that, I God. And this is what life is all about. And he shows step by step. It becomes a symphony, the Bhagavan's Gita. Life becomes exciting, becomes a joy, all the beautiful words starts coming out, and it becomes a celebration. No regrets at all. So with that, I'm going to stop. Sandosham.